Hello. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I figured, why not serve it with wine, appetizers, and a three-course meal? My wife thought she had me fooled, sneaking around like a second-rate soap opera character, but what she didn't know was that I had front-row seats to her little performance. So, I did what any loving husband would do. I threw her a dinner party, invited everyone she cared about, and let the truth marinate like the steak I planned to serve. Now, before you think I'm just some bitter ex-husband crying into a beer, let's get one thing straight. I didn't want revenge at first. I wanted my marriage to work. I wanted to believe that the late nights at work, the sudden gym obsession, and the constant texting under the table were all just coincidences. But let's be real, no one suddenly becomes a fitness enthusiast at 34 unless they're training for a marathon or cheating on their spouse. Her name is Jessica, and up until recently, I thought she was my perfect match. We had been married for 7 years, built a beautiful life together, a nice house, a dog, a shared Netflix account. I was the kind of husband who remembered anniversaries, planned weekend getaways, and never forgot to buy her favorite overpriced oat milk for her morning coffee. I worked hard, provided for us, and never once imagined that she'd throw it all away for a man named Brandon. Brandon. Even his name sounds like someone who owns too many tank tops and unironically says, bro, in professional settings. He was one of those guys who probably had an entire playlist dedicated to hype songs before hitting the gym. A man whose entire personality revolved around protein shakes, motivational quotes, and bragging about hustle culture. The kind of guy whose deepest conversation probably involved whether creatine was a scam or not. And yet, somehow, this walking cliché had wormed his way into my wife's life. At first, I ignored the signs. I told myself I was being paranoid. Every suspicious thing had some sort of plausible explanation. Jessica working late? Big project at work. Jessica going to the gym more often? Self-care is important. Jessica getting defensive when I casually asked what she did that day? She must be stressed. But here's the thing about gut feelings, they don't shut up. They sit in your chest, growing heavier and heavier, gnawing at the edges of your logic until you're left staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., wondering if you're crazy or just refusing to see the truth. And then, fate intervened. One night, Jessica left her laptop open on the couch. Normally, I respected her privacy, but an email popped up that caught my eye. Subject line? Can't wait for our next hotel night. The sender? Brandon from work. I read it. Twice. Then a third time, just to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving me. But no. There it was. Written proof that my marriage was a joke. I don't remember how long I sat there. Minutes? Hours? All I know is that at some point, my hand stopped shaking and a new feeling settled in. Cold. Calculated. Dangerous. I didn't say anything. I didn't wake her up screaming, demanding answers. No, I played it smart. I took screenshots. I forwarded the email to myself. Then, with a steadiness that even surprised me, I closed the laptop, placed it exactly where she had left it, and walked to the kitchen. I poured myself a drink, took a slow sip, and I started planning. Jessica wanted to play pretend? Fine. I'd let her keep playing a little longer. But when I was done, she wouldn't have a single piece of her perfect little fantasy left. I spent the next few weeks collecting evidence. Emails, texts, even hotel receipts she had so carelessly left crumpled at the bottom of her purse. Turns out, Jessica wasn't just careless in her marriage, she was careless in her affair, too. I knew that if I confronted her now, it would turn into denial, gaslighting, excuses. No, I needed something bigger. Something that would not only expose her, but destroy the fantasy world she thought she had built. And that's when the idea hit me. A dinner party. A perfectly curated evening, with all the right guests, her family, our closest friends, maybe even her coworkers, and, of course, a very special guest of honor, Brandon's girlfriend. Oh yes, because Brandon wasn't just some single gym rat. He had a girlfriend. A long-term one. A girlfriend who had no idea her loyal boyfriend was sneaking around behind her back. So, I made contact. I found her on Instagram. I sent a polite, anonymous message. Just a simple, hey, you might want to check out these receipts. Thought you should know. And just like that, the first domino fell. Jessica had no idea. She was still going about her days, smiling at me, kissing me goodnight, living in blissful ignorance. Meanwhile, I was setting the stage for the grand finale. I sent out invitations. I made sure everyone was free. I even picked out the menu. Because when the truth came out, I wanted Jessica's perfect world to collapse right between the salad and the main course. You ever watch a spider build its web? It doesn't rush. It takes its time, making sure each thread is perfectly placed before waiting for its prey to walk in, completely unaware. That was me. I wasn't just planning a confrontation, I was orchestrating an event. Jessica had no idea what was coming. She was still moving through life like she was untouchable, completely unaware that I had front-row seats to the horror movie she was directing. At home, she still acted like the devoted wife. She'd greet me with a smile, kiss my cheek, ask about my day. Some nights she even curled up next to me on the couch, resting her head on my shoulder as if nothing had changed. Meanwhile, she was sneaking off for secret rendezvous with Brandon, believing she was being clever. But here's the thing about people who think they're getting away with something. They get sloppy. Jessica had been covering her tracks well at first, keeping her phone out of sight, deleting messages, using work as an excuse. But the deeper she got into the affair, the more reckless she became. She started leaving small clues behind, receipts from suspiciously expensive lunches, perfume lingering on her after nights out, and the occasional text notification that flashed on her screen before she could swipe it away. But the biggest mistake? She underestimated me. I kept playing the part of the oblivious husband while quietly collecting everything. Screenshots of messages, timestamps of when she worked late, even footage from a home security camera I had installed months ago, one she forgot existed, showing her sneaking in past midnight after meeting up with Brandon. And while I prepared my evidence, I set the stage for the dinner party. I made guest lists. Jessica's parents? Invited. Our mutual friends? Also invited. Her boss? Wouldn't miss it. And the most important guest? Brandon's long-term girlfriend, Emily. Emily was the key. See, Brandon had been playing the same game as Jessica, sneaking around, lying through his teeth, believing he was in control. I had no doubt he had fed her the same garbage stories that Jessica fed me. So I reached out. It was surprisingly easy to find her. A little social media digging, a few mutual connections, and there she was, Brandon's happy girlfriend, completely in the dark. I sent her a message. Simple. No emotional outburst, no accusations. Just cold, hard facts. A few screenshots of messages, receipts from their hotel stays, and the timestamps to match. At first, she didn't believe me. She asked if I was some crazy jealous ex trying to cause drama. So I gave her more. Screenshots of Brandon calling Jessica the best thing that's ever happened to him. Evidence of him canceling plans with Emily to work late, while he was actually meeting Jessica. That's when she stopped responding. Then, after a few hours, I got the message. I want in. Perfect. Now, I had the last piece of the puzzle. I made sure everything was perfect. The invitations went out. I played the loving husband, telling Jessica I wanted to celebrate a special night for us, a beautiful dinner with friends and family. She ate it up, excitedly helping me plan the menu, choosing the wine, even picking out a new dress. The irony? She thought this was all for her. Meanwhile, I was working behind the scenes, making sure that when the truth came out, it would hit like a nuclear bomb. I even went the extra mile, reserving a private dining room at a high-end restaurant, ensuring we had privacy for what was about to unfold. I didn't want some messy public breakdown. I wanted a controlled demolition. Jessica's mom told me how excited she was. Her dad shook my hand, telling me I was such a thoughtful husband. Oh, if only they knew. The day before the party, I got a text from Emily. I have something that might help. She sent me a recording. Apparently, Brandon had been extra bold lately, bragging to a mutual friend about how he was juggling 2 women and how Jessica was so easy to manipulate. He had laughed about it. Talked about how she was so desperate for attention, she'd believe anything he said. Talked about how he had no intention of leaving Emily but liked the thrill of the chase. Talked about how he couldn't wait to see how far he could push it. It was disgusting. And it was exactly what I needed. I saved the recording. Labeled it dessert. Because when the time was right, I planned to serve it right after the main course. The night before the party, Jessica was glowing. She kissed me goodnight, telling me how excited she was for the dinner, how much she loved the way I was always so thoughtful. I looked at her, smiled, and told her I couldn't wait to see her reaction. Because in less than 24 hours, she was going to realize something important. She hadn't just been cheating on me. She had been playing herself. Some people plan revenge like a quick, fiery explosion, dramatic, loud, over in seconds. But me? I crafted a masterpiece. Every detail, every moment, Every carefully placed word was a piece of an intricate puzzle that Jessica would put together right in front of everyone she loved. The day of the dinner, I woke up early. Jessica was excited, completely oblivious to what was coming. She spent the morning picking out her dress, curling her hair, smiling at me like she hadn't spent months sneaking off with Brandon. I let her enjoy it. I wanted her to walk into that restaurant feeling like the star of the show. I had rented out a private dining room at one of the nicest restaurants in town. It was elegant, intimate, perfect for what I had planned. The guests arrived one by one, all dressed to impress. Jessica's parents, beaming with pride. Our closest friends, laughing, drinking wine. Her boss, excited to celebrate such a special night. And then, of course, there was Emily. Emily, Brandon's long-term girlfriend. The one who had no idea what was happening until I sent her the truth. The one who is now my secret partner in this perfectly crafted takedown. She arrived in a stunning black dress, looking calm, composed, dangerous. Jessica greeted her with a hug, completely unaware that this woman was here to destroy her. I smiled. Everything was set. Dinner started smoothly. Wine was poured, toasts were made. Jessica was glowing, soaking in the attention, laughing as if she was the luckiest woman in the world. I let it go on for a while. Let her feel safe. Let her build herself up, completely unaware of the free fall that was coming. Then, right before the main course, I stood up. I clinked my glass, drawing everyone's attention. I just wanted to take a moment, I said, my voice steady, calm, to celebrate an incredible woman, my wife, Jessica. She smiled at me, completely unaware of the storm forming right above her head. I continued. For years, I've been lucky to have someone so loyal, so loving, so dedicated by my side. I let the words hang, watching as Emily shifted slightly in her chair, eyes glinting. Jessica reached for my hand, squeezing it. Ah, babe. I smiled back. Oh, you have no idea. I took a deep breath. Since I love Jessica so much, I continued, I thought it would be amazing to share something special with all of you tonight. I pulled out my phone, pressed play, and the restaurant filled with Brandon's voice. Loud, clear, unmistakable, laughing, bragging, talking about Jessica, about how easy she was to manipulate, about how he was never going to leave Emily, but liked having Jessica as a little extra fun on the side, about how he was curious to see how far he could push her. The room went silent. Jessica froze. Her face drained of color so fast I thought she might pass out. Her parents turned to her, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Her boss looked horrified. And Emily? She just smirked. Jessica shot up from her chair. What is this? I stayed seated, calm, in control. This, I said, tilting my head. This is what your boyfriend says about you when you're not around. Gasps. Murmurs. The entire room shifted. Jessica's father looked ready to explode. Her mother covered her mouth in pure mortification. And then the doors opened, and in walked Brandon, looking confused, because Emily had invited him. Jessica spun around, eyes wide as Brandon stopped in his tracks, looking at all the shocked faces, then at me, then at Emily. Emily stood up, walked right up to him. Hi, babe, she said sweetly. Did you enjoy your little hotel dates? Brandon's face went white. Jessica looked between them, realization finally crashing down. You knew, she whispered to Emily. Oh, I've known for weeks, Emily said with a shrug. Thanks to your husband. Jessica stumbled back into her chair, the weight of the truth hitting her all at once. Her affair? Exposed. Her secret relationship? A joke. Brandon? Nowhere to run. And I just took a sip of my wine. Because I had one. Jessica's mom turned to her, voice shaking. How could you do this? Jessica tried to speak, to explain, but there was nothing left to say. I leaned forward, setting my napkin down. I just wanted to celebrate my wife, I said, my voice smooth, relaxed. She's been working so hard. You know, at the gym, at work. I looked at Brandon, at keeping secrets. Jessica looked like she wanted to disappear. Brandon turned to Emily. Babe, I can expla. Emily held up a hand. Oh, don't bother. She smiled sweetly. I already moved out of our apartment. Jessica's eyes snapped to Brandon. Wait, what? Brandon's mouth opened, then closed. And just like that, his life crumbled too. Emily turned to me, lifting her glass. Well, that was fun. I clinked mine against hers. Absolutely. Then I stood up. Anyway, I think I'm done here. Jessica didn't just sit there and take it. Oh no. She exploded. The moment I leaned back in my chair, Enjoying the fallout like a man watching a perfectly timed fireworks show, she lost it. First, she stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. Her face was no longer pale, it was red, her breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps. You snake!" she shrieked, her voice cracking through the silence. The entire room jumped. The air was already thick with tension, but now, it was pure chaos. Jessica's mom gasped. Her dad muttered something under his breath. Emily sipped her wine like she was watching a live reality TV episode. Brandon, still frozen in place, looked like he was seriously reconsidering every decision that led him to this moment. Jessica wasn't just angry, she was desperate. "You set me up," she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. Her entire body trembled with fury. You sick, twisted." I raised an eyebrow. "I threw you a dinner party." That only made it worse. She lunged for the table, grabbing a wine glass and hurling it at me. It shattered against the wall behind me. The room collectively gasped. Jessica's father stood up. "Jessica." She turned to him, eyes blazing. "Don't," she snapped. "Don't you dare act like he's the victim here. He's been spying on me, manipulating me. She turned back to me. "You humiliated me." I tilted my head, staying completely calm. "No, Jessica. You did that all by yourself." She screamed. Actually screamed. Then she lunged at me, hands outstretched. For a split second, I thought she was actually going to grab me by the collar and shake me like a lunatic. But before she could reach me, her father stepped in. He grabbed her arm, yanking her back. "Sit down," he growled. She ripped her arm away. "You're taking a side?" Her mother buried her face in her hands. "Oh my goodness, Jessica." Jessica was shaking. Her breath was uneven. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for anything, anyone, to grab onto. But no one moved. Even Brandon, her oh-so-loyal secret lover, was still stuck in place like a deer in headlights. Silent. Useless. Exposed. That's when she turned on him. She hissed. "Say something." Brandon finally blinked. I don't know what to." That was all he got out before Jessica slapped him across the face. The entire table erupted. Gasps, silverware clattering. Someone knocked over a water glass. Brandon stumbled back, clutching his cheek, stunned. What is wrong with you?" Jessica screamed again, grabbing a handful of the tablecloth and yanking it. Plates, glasses, silverware. Everything went flying. At this point, the restaurant staff stormed in, looking horrified. "Ma'am, you need to calm down," one of them said. Jessica spun around. "Shut up." Oh, she had completely lost it. Emily, sitting back with an amused smirk, finally spoke. "Wow, Brandon. She seems super stable. Good choice." That was the final straw. Jessica grabbed a plate and hurled it straight at Emily. Emily dodged it without even flinching. Jessica, breathing like an angry bull, turned back to me, eyes wild. "You ruined my life," she snarled. "You think you're so smart? You think you won." I smiled. "Jessica." I gestured at the destroyed table, the broken glass, the stunned guests, the restaurant staff now looking seriously concerned. "Take a good look around." She blinked. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough. "You did this." Jessica froze. For the first time since the explosion, she actually looked around. At the horrified faces of her parents. At the silent, humiliated Brandon. At her boss, watching everything unfold with pure disappointment. At the wreckage she created. And that's when I saw it. That flicker of realization. The tiniest, briefest moment where she understood that she had just obliterated every piece of the life she once had. Her breath hitched. Her shoulders slumped. And then, she turned and stormed out of the restaurant. No coat. No purse. No goodbye. Just pure, unhinged rage disappearing into the night. For a second, no one spoke. Then, slowly, Emily stood up, stretched, and picked up a fork from the floor. "Well," she said, glancing at me. "That was fun." Jessica's mother let out a shaky breath. Her father looked at me and nodded. Her boss took out his phone. "I think I need to make a few calls," he murmured, before walking toward the exit. "Brandon?" Oh, Brandon just sat there, staring at his plate. His night was far from over. And me? I leaned back in my chair and took another sip of wine. Because this was the moment I had been waiting for. And it was absolutely perfect. Jessica left in a hurricane of rage, but the storm she created didn't die down when she walked out that door. No, it was just getting started. The restaurant was a disaster zone. Shattered glass, spilled drinks, plates overturned. Some guests still sat in shock, trying to process the absolute catastrophe they had just witnessed. Others whispered to each other, wide-eyed, like they had just watched a crime scene unfold in real time. Jessica's father was the first to break the silence. He exhaled loudly, then stood up, rubbing his temples like a man who had just realized he had raised a problem, not a daughter. Her mother followed, eyes darting toward me, not with anger, but with something close to shame. I don't even know what to say, she mumbled, still clutching a napkin like it was a life raft in the wreckage. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Her father turned to Brandon, who had not moved since getting slapped across the face. You are a disgrace. Each word came out like a hammer against steel. Brandon's mouth opened, then closed. There was no excuse to make. No way to talk himself out of this. And then came Jessica's boss. He had been silent the whole time, but now? He stood slowly, adjusting his tie, looking at the mess that was once his employee's reputation. He took out his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. She was up for a promotion, he muttered, mostly to himself. He shook his head. This is unprofessional at a level I can't even wrap my head around. Jessica's mother let out a strangled sob. Then, just when I thought the show was winding down, the real fun started. Jessica began texting me. The first one hit my phone just as I was helping myself to the untouched slice of chocolate cake sitting in front of me. Jessica, you think this is funny? Jessica, you humiliated me in front of my parents. I took another bite of cake. It was delicious. Jessica, you ruined my life. She had a lot of nerve. I smirked, leaned back, and typed the only response she deserved. Me. No, Jessica. You ruined your life. I just made sure everyone saw it happen. The typing bubbles popped up instantly. She was raging. Jessica, you think you've won? You think this is over? Oh, now I was really interested. Because cheaters, when cornered, do what they always do, double down. Jessica didn't go home. No, that would have been too logical. Instead, she went back to the restaurant. 15 minutes after her dramatic exit, the doors slammed open. There she was. Hair wild, eyes blazing, chest rising and falling like she had just run a marathon fueled by pure hatred. You, she screeched, pointing at me. The entire restaurant turned. I didn't even flinch. Just calmly set my fork down. Back so soon. That only made her angrier. You think you can just do this to me? She stormed toward me, fist clenched. Before she could reach me, a waiter stepped in front of her. Ma'am, we're going to have to ask you to leave. Jessica ignored him. You set me up, she shouted, voice cracking. You wanted to destroy me, didn't you? The guests who had tried to return to their meals? Yeah, they weren't eating anymore. Every single one of them was watching the meltdown of the century. She turned to her parents. And you're just going to sit there. You're going to take his side? Her father's face turned to stone. This isn't about taking sides, Jessica. This is about you facing the consequences of your actions. Her mother burst into tears. Jessica let out a shaky breath, her hands balling into fists at her sides. This is your fault, she growled at me. You did this. I simply tilted my head. No, Jessica. I just made sure the truth was served alongside dinner. Her nostrils flared. Then, suddenly, she grabbed my full glass of wine and threw it at me. It happened too fast to react. 1 second, I was dry. The next, I was wearing my drink. A collective gasp spread through the room. Even I was a little shocked at how far she was willing to go. Jessica stepped back, chest heaving, waiting for me to explode. I didn't. I simply reached for my napkin, wiped my face, and smiled. Nice aim, I said, my voice dangerously calm. She trembled, hands still shaking. She thought I was going to lose it. Thought I was going to scream, argue, make a scene like her. But that's not how I operate. I leaned in slightly, just enough so only she could hear. Keep going, Jessica. Let's see how much deeper you can dig this grave. Her breath hitched. Her mind was spinning, trying to figure out what to do next. But I had already won. Because no matter what she did, she couldn't undo what had already happened. Her parents had seen it. Her boss had seen it. Her friends had seen it. Her entire world had burned to the ground, and now? She was just standing in the ashes, screaming at the sky. Finally, the waiter stepped in again. Ma'am, if you don't leave now, we'll have to call security. Jessica laughed. A dry, hollow sound. Then, without another word, she turned and stormed out. For the last time. I exhaled, slowly, turning back to the table. Emily raised her glass. Now that, she said, was the best thing I've ever seen. Brandon, still in complete shock, finally found his voice. Dude, what the heck just happened? I didn't even look at him. Just picked up my fork, took another bite of cake, and enjoyed the taste of absolute victory. Jessica left the restaurant for the second time that night, but this time, it was different. The first time, she had left in rage, convinced she still had some kind of control, some way to spin the situation. But after she came back, humiliated herself again, and threw a drink at me in front of everyone who mattered, that was pure defeat. I sat there, watching the door swing shut behind her, letting the moment settle. The restaurant was dead silent, like everyone was waiting to see if she would storm back in for round 3. But no, that was it. The show was over. Jessica's mother still had her face buried in her hands. Her father just sat there, staring at the table, his jaw tight, like a man whose last remaining ounce of patience had finally snapped. Her boss was typing something furiously into his phone, probably drafting up an email Jessica was not going to like in the morning. Brandon was still slouched in his chair, too stunned to move, his cheek still red from Jessica's slap. He looked like a man who had just survived a natural disaster and was still trying to process how he made it out alive. I had no sympathy for him. Emily, on the other hand, was having the time of her life. She picked up her half-finished drink, took a slow sip, and leaned back in her chair with the kind of satisfaction you only see in people who just won the lottery. She turned to me, raising her glass slightly. "Well," she said, "that was an experience." I smirked. "Enjoy the show?" "Oh, I loved it." She turned to Brandon, who still hadn't moved. "What about you, sweetheart? Fun night?" He blinked at her like he had completely forgotten she was even there. Then, his face twisted into panic. "Emily, She raised a hand, cutting him off. "Nope. Don't care." She stood up, grabbing her purse. "I'm going home. To my new apartment. Where none of your stuff is." His mouth dropped open. "Wait, what?" She gave him a pitying look. "Oh, honey. You didn't think I was sticking around after this, did you?" She patted his cheek, the same cheek Jessica had slapped, and walked out, humming to herself like she hadn't just completely dismantled his life. Brandon just sat there, stunned. He looked at me like he actually expected sympathy. I took one last bite of cake and stood up, grabbing my coat. "Well," I said, "that was fun." I glanced at Jessica's parents. "Thanks for coming." Her father nodded stiffly. Her mother didn't even look up. Then I turned to Brandon one last time. "Good luck, man." And I walked out. I expected the fallout to be bad, but even I underestimated just how fast and how hard Jessica's life collapsed. The next morning, she called me 12 times in a row. I didn't answer. She left voicemails, half of them furious, half of them sobbing. I ignored them all. Then, her boss called. Not to yell at me, but to thank me. Apparently, after the restaurant fiasco, word spread through the company like wildfire. Jessica had been up for a big promotion, one that required a spotless reputation, leadership skills, and professionalism. So yeah, that offer? Gone. Instead, she got a meeting with HR. By the end of the week, she was fired. But wait, there's more. Remember how she trashed the restaurant? Yeah, the manager didn't appreciate that. He sent her a bill for damages, over $2,000 for broken glassware, stained upholstery, and lost business from guests who had left early. And here's the cherry on top, Jessica's parents found out she had been dipping into their savings. See, she had borrowed money from them under the excuse that she and I were saving for a bigger house. In reality, she had been using it to fund her little hotel escapades. Her father? Not happy. He cut her off. No more financial help. No more safety net. Jessica was jobless, broke, and officially alone. I thought she might leave town out of embarrassment. But no. She kept trying to get me back. For weeks after the dinner party, she bombarded me with texts, emails, even handwritten letters, all begging for a second chance. One email stood out. I know I made a mistake, but I can't believe you just throw away 7 years like this. Don't you remember the good times? Can't we fix this? I replied with exactly one sentence. You threw away 7 years the moment you booked a hotel with Brandon. Blocked her after that. Jessica? Last I heard, she moved in with a friend. She was struggling to find a job because, well, it's hard to explain why you got fired over a public meltdown. She also tried dating again, but, surprise, surprise, most guys aren't interested in someone whose most recent Google search includes how to remove red wine stains from an expensive suit. Brandon? A wreck. Emily really did leave him. He had to move back in with his brother, lost half his friends, and, oh, this is my favorite part, got rejected from the gym he used to work at. Apparently, they didn't want the drama. Emily? Thriving. She's dating someone new, has a great new apartment, and funny enough, we still talk sometimes. No romance, just two people who bonded over taking down a couple of cheaters. And me? I moved on. Took a nice vacation. Focused on work. Started dating again. And let me tell you, nothing, and I mean nothing, makes a new relationship feel better than knowing you left a cheater in ruins. Some people say revenge isn't worth it, that you should just walk away. Maybe they're right. But personally, I've never had a dinner taste better, and I don't regret a single second of it. Bye-bye.